so we started recording. Everyone should see the little recording in the top left corner. So first, I just want to say welcome to everybody to the January International Chapter for Graduate Women in Science monthly meeting. And I'm Dr. Susan Feddix, the International President and one of the founding members of the International Chapter. I'm based in Dublin, Ireland, and today we will have an enlightening conversation about teaching science, and we'll be giving it a global perspective given the worldwide reach of our members. So this event is being recorded, so it will be posted to YouTube channel, and just keep in mind to mute yourself and raise your hand if you have a question to ask. So to go through, I'll introduce my fellow officers. We have Judy, who is our domestic president in Massachusetts. Tucci is our international vice president in Nigeria. Alice is our domestic vice president in Las Vegas. Robin is our domestic treasurer in Virginia. Imelda, who is our liaison in Nigeria. Francisca is in Nigeria, and Julie is in Pennsylvania, and they are our mentors and advisors who have been with us from the beginning, as have a few others. And as you see, we are seeking a secretary and someone to represent International Chapter on the membership committee. And I will go into further detail on why that's important. So what we do, the officers in the background, how are we working for our chapter members? Well, we have monthly Zoom meetings ourselves aside from these chapter-wide Zoom meetings, and we have lots of emails and WhatsApp chat. We prepare the newsletters, we try to promote funding opportunities, and we connect with GWIS National, and we have Nigeria as presently our only sub-chapter. And then coming in 2021, we will launch our website, newly revamped website, and we will publish our Global Voices project from 2020. For those of you that are new members, the Global Voices project is a multimedia project in which our members submitted content, and we will publish all of this together on our website, showing the perspective of women in science around the world during the global pandemic of 2020. And as part of that project, we created a YouTube channel, and that's where we're building some of our content. And as you see, we have chapter meetings scheduled all the way until June, but keep an eye out because there will be announcements of other things happening. So as an update to our membership, as of just a week or two ago, we have 50 members currently, and we also have, you see we're in 24 countries, and all members can be found on the private GWIS directory that you see there. And also, we have both students and professionals, so this is a great opportunity to see how people can connect women in science across the globe. So a few announcements to go through that we have upcoming events. So first of all, we have reduced price of annual GWIS dues for middle and lower income countries. So if you visit the website, which I will add to the chat, you'll see that you'll see the list of countries where this is eligible. And this is why it would be nice to have someone on the membership committee, because then we could have someone representing International Chapter and keeping up with the events. And then, as I mentioned, we're seeking a secretary and a membership committee representative. So please contact us if you have any interest to volunteer, and I can go into more detail about the specific duties that the secretary and membership committee representative would have, and it's volunteer-based, so it's only as much time as you would have outside of other things. And also, we have a question. Did you receive funding during 2020? Because we would like to hear from our members if you have received funding in 2020, because that's pretty incredible to have taken advantage of the lockdown and all the stress and to use it to your advantage to have applied for funding and we want to make that as part of the accomplishments that have occurred during 2020 in our Global Voices project. Also, for revamping the website, we would love to see pictures of your areas. Women are on 6 continents in this chapter. So areas of either around town or your work, your lab, whether you're teaching, having fun, or different things that you're doing. in order to have up on our website to represent the international chapter properly. And so keep in mind that Monday, March 8th is International Women's Day. We'll make an announcement and we'll probably be just something internet-based for that. And then we have a private WhatsApp chat, so you can let me know if you want to be a part of that. And so far we have 32 members. And for any of this information, you can email international@gwis.org, where you receive all the emails. Also, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And we also have a LinkedIn page that I'll also add to the chat. Yesterday on the LinkedIn page, I posted a funding opportunity from the World Academy of Sciences that Francisca had let me know about. So I will add this to the chat as well. So that's where you can keep up with different funding opportunities and other news that we have. So in general, if there are any questions, we can discuss about International Chapter. We can discuss those after the science education discussion. So yeah, also if anyone has any ideas for topics of the monthly meetings, that would be great to let us know about, because we want to make this worthy, for your participation. So today I'll introduce our panelists. We see Dr. Francisca Nwaokorie, who is a senior lecturer, Department of Medical Laboratory Science, College of Medicine, University of Lagos, and she is in Nigeria. We have Dr. Nazira Albargothy, I hope I said that okay, Senior Research Fellow, Division of Neurobiology, Department of Clinical and Experimental Medicine in Sweden. However, she'll explain she's presently actually in the UK due to lockdown. And she's an awardee of the Erasmus Plus International Credit Mobility Program. And we also have Dr. Julie Ealy, who is an Associate Professor in Chemistry, Penn State, Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania State University. So type your questions and comments in the chat while we're going through the discussion, or you can raise your hand, because we want this to be an open conversation among both teachers and students in this intercontinental crowd. So we're going to start with each panelist will make a 5-minute statement where they introduce themselves, their scientific discipline, and which subjects you teach. So to get started, let's start with Francisca.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. I think the crowd is becoming much. I like the number that I'm seeing. We are really growing every day. My name is Dr. Nwaokorie Francisca. I am a senior lecturer with the Department of Medical Laboratory Science, College of Medicine of the University of Lagos. I joined the university in 2015 after spending 8 years with Nigerian Institute of Medical Research. I am involved in lecturing undergraduate courses. I teach them medical microbiology. I also give lecture on biotechnology, as well as molecular diagnostics. I also have a degree in management, so I also teach them laboratory management and entrepreneurship. I also lecture in postgraduate courses for master's and PhD students, and I coordinate master's program in molecular diagnosis in my department. It has been fun. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of the panelists for this meeting for the month of January.
Thank you.
I have,
I'm sorry, continue.
Okay. Is my 5 minutes now, or I just wait?
I think we can move on to Dr. Nazira, who will share her slides, and then Julie, and then we'll do the questions. Let me stop sharing. Okay, Nazira, yeah, you should be able.
So, hello everyone. I'm a research fellow in the Division of Neurobiology at the Department of Clinical and Experimental Medicine at the University of Linköping in Sweden. I've taught various classes ranging from traditional lectures for 30 or more students, masters and undergraduates, to smaller problem-based learning tutorials that contain up to, I think, 8 students at a time. I thought in my 5-minute introduction that I would speak a little bit about the Erasmus International Credit Mobility Initiative as I think it's quite relevant for science in education in 2021, particularly because credit mobility is one of the most affected by the COVID pandemic. The Erasmus Plus program has enabled the exchange or the movement of 4 million European students around Europe to spend part of their education in a higher education institution in another country. The International Credit Mobility, or ICM, on the other hand, aims to set up mobility agreements with partners around the world to send and receive not only students, but also staff. So it helps participants acquire new skills, supports their professional development, and deepens their understanding of other cultures. For students, it's likely to boost their employability and transversal skills. And in fact, unemployment rates among Erasmus participants is 23% lower 5 years after graduation compared to those who did not go abroad. For staff, they can acquire new competencies for their professional development, improve their teaching style, experience new cultures, and of course, it can be beneficial for them too. Our exchange will take place between the University of Linköping in Sweden and the Hashemite University in Jordan. And our key goal is to raise awareness of the importance of medical ethics so that a new generation of doctors follow the code of ethical conduct in a location that is a major medical tourism hub. Some of our objectives are to incorporate problem-based learning strategies that have been developed at LIU in a medical and a neuroethics module for third-year medical students at the Hashemite University in Jordan. There'll be professional training for Hashemite staff, and there will also be a student exchange that will allow some of the students to take up a laboratory research project. And this will not only introduce them to research, but also pharmaceutical development, diagnostics, neuroethics, and all sorts of new topics. We'll also focus on the development of e-learning materials, and I think this is more important now than it has ever been before, especially since the COVID pandemic has had a major impact on the movement of students and staff and in-person teaching. Thank you. That was my short introduction. Please feel free to ask me about this in our panelist questions. That's all from me.
Great, thank you very much, Nazira. It was very, I was a Marie Curie fellow, so I understand a lot about mobility. Can't imagine going through it now. We can talk about that during the discussion. Julie, if you'd like to give your introduction.
I guess this might be a little bit more than 5 minutes, but I hope I planned for 5 minutes. I teach at Penn State Lehigh Valley, which is a small campus of Penn State University. My campus has about 1,000 students. We are all commuting. For Penn State University, it consists of 14 campuses, 10 colleges, and University Park, which is, I call the big place out west because I'm in the eastern part of Pennsylvania. So there are about 100 students at my campus. I teach general chemistry, lecture and lab, and also organic chemistry. I advise approximately 20 students, and I do research that's both scientific and chemical education. In my general chemistry lecture in the fall, where I had approximately 50 students, I taught face-to-face. That was my choice to do face-to-face. I taught in a room with a capacity of 90 students, but only 18 could attend face-to-face at any one time. So 1/3 of my students were roomies and 2/3 were Zoomies, and that posed its own unique challenges. I teach using the Socratic method because I like to talk to my students and ask them questions. And my students have told me, when you ask a question, Dr. Ealy, you want us to answer you, whereas other teachers answer their own questions. So what do you do when only 1/3 of your students are present physically and you cannot see their faces, and the other 2/3 are at home, and most of whom don't have their cameras on because they don't have to unless they're taking a test. So to ask questions and interact with my students became a major challenge last spring and was continued this fall. It was like, how am I going to interact with them so they know that I want them to ask questions and I want them to answer my questions. So I went through some serious technology training in the summer, actually more than one workshop. But I went through 2 workshops on using poll questions where you can present a question to the class. And what I like about that is I present the poll question and display that. You can watch the students as they answer the poll question. And then they're entering their answers, and then you can see what the choices are, because I do multiple choice. There are other possibilities, but that's what I do. And often when I'm finished, I will start talking about the results, and my students will say, "Dr. Ealy, we cannot see the results. Could you please share your screen?" So I laugh, because my mantra during COVID has been laugh so I don't cry. And that has got me through a lot, and apparently it's been useful to my students. So there has not been the opportunity for students to talk to each other about the questions. Apparently there's something that I can use, that I will use maybe when we go back face to face. I hope to go back face to face February the 15th. Right now we are on remote. We are on remote. So I can't go around and talk to my students individually. And though I've learned to recognize a lot of the students' voices, which is kind of creepy, I think, but my students can ask questions. They don't have to raise their hand. They can unmute themselves. And so it's been nice knowing some of the students' voices from the fall semester. And I know it makes them feel good when I can say their name. And it also creates an environment for other students where they know it's really fun to ask questions and to do that. So I don't stand on ceremony with that. Students also teach general chemistry lab, and I did that in the fall and spring. Right now, my fall labs were all face-to-face, but the capacity of my room was only 25 students. Excuse me, the capacity of the room was 25 students, but only 10 students could be in the room at any one time to make sure that it was a safe environment. There's a plexiglass divider that divides the lab stations. I really liked teaching face-to-face, especially in the lab where I could go around and talk to my students, most of whom I also taught in lecture, some of whom I'm teaching now in lecture, so they at least got to know a little bit about my style in the fall. Before the students can enter the lab, they put on gloves, they put on goggles and their lab coat. So once they're in there, they're never touching anything in the lab with their hands, which has really saved a lot of trouble with cleaning the lab when the students leave the first time. So I had to reduce the number of different labs that I taught in the fall to be able to accommodate 60 students. So with 3 lab sections and the 10 only being able to meet every other week, I had to reduce the number of labs, and I chose labs there where they would have the skills that I felt would be important if they took a spring semester lab. So, and one of my labs was Zoom, and my philosophy during a Zoom lab, which takes literally hours to write, for me anyway, is that I want it to be interactive. So when I'm in a Zoom lab with a 3-hour Zoom lab with my lab students, I'm with them the whole time. And I gather from talking to students that their instructors just give them the lab and they usually just go away. And that's not my style, because my students rely on me. They know that I'm there and that we can be interactive together. So that has been very important. When I added, so I'm giving my big overview, and then individual questions can be asked. I'm almost done. So what I did is I wrote, I filmed, videotaped all the labs for the fall. Best thing I have ever done. And shortly I will tell you why that's the best thing I have ever done. And so for each lab, they had a pre-lab video quiz that they took before the lab. And then when they came to lab, they took a second pre-lab video quiz and also a quiz on the previous week's lab. This upped the number of assessments they had. It also helped to give them more opportunities for assessment, and to also help kind of even out the grades and to make it more equitable for more students. So right now I'm teaching remote. February 15th, we go back. I hope I go back face to face, and I've had to rewrite 6 labs to make them Zoom labs. And not fun and takes a lot of time. What's interesting about my class, and this has been a discovery because of the videoing the labs. So in the past, my students have had written directions. They come to lab, they work with another student. One person usually does all the lab work. Somebody else becomes a note taker. They really don't interact with each other. So what I observed with the labs being videotaped, that it really helped with the equity issue in my lab. So when I would have this past semester, 6 different sections, 6 different times I teach the same lab, 10 students. We have many, many students at my campus that are international. For a small commuting campus of Penn State, it's really unusual. And I've always gone around to my students and say, what country are you from? And how long have you been in the United States? And so many of my students, English is a second language for them. And when I watched the lab take place in the fall, where they're working exclusively by themselves, the fact that those videos were there was amazing. Some students use the video the whole entire lab, and they actually did the lab with me as I was talking about it, and they were reading the instructions. Some people use it somewhat, a little bit, and others maybe would turn it on and consult it for a particular procedure. So addressing that diversity issue and the fact that made things so much more equitable was absolutely amazing. And I'm overawed by having observed this and never really having thought about the language differences of my students, which I've had many of those. So let's see, I'm almost done here. Oh yes. Doing the videos is very challenging and very time consuming, but because of what I observed in the fall, all my labs for the spring have also been videotaped. And I'm happy I did this, and it's really helped students to be successful in completing the lab and knowing what to do. And they could turn on the computer and check to see about a particular procedure. They obviously can ask me questions because I'm in the room and I'm walking around. So I think that's probably the most exciting thing that I did, where I saw how much it benefited my international students. So thank you very much. That was pretty fast. If you have questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Julie. That leads into the first question, because the first question I have lined up for the panelists is, what's changed the most for you as a teacher since COVID-19? And you seem to have covered it all. So I was going to say, I'll ask Nazira, if you don't mind answering that, what's changed the most for you as a teacher since COVID-19?
Pardon, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat that, if that's okay.
That's fine. Just the question is, what has changed the most for you as a teacher since COVID-19?
I think in particular, the fact that almost all teaching has now become distant. So you rely mainly on Zoom or Teams. And I think this is mostly problematic when you're used to doing some practical assessments and other type of interactive learning that you can't really do via Zoom and Teams. So I think that's what's changed the most.
Francisca? What do you mind answering? What has changed for you the most since the COVID-19 as a teacher, or is she might be frozen?
But now she's kind of moving. Her eyes are blinking.
There, she's unmuted. Maybe, Francisca, maybe it's better without the video. There.
Okay, sorry for that. I didn't know I was muted. Yeah, thank you so much for this topic that we're discussing. University of Lagos and other universities in Nigeria actually reopened last week. And across Nigeria, some are doing physical teaching, maintaining the social distancing. I've been able to discuss with those universities in the Southeast. They mentioned that they had to distribute the classes and then get the students shared among themselves in batches. So they are teaching phase by phase. So I had about 4 or 5 universities saying that. But in my University of Lagos, it has really been tough in the last 1 week, very challenging for me, because the online e-learning is like a crash program. We just got to know about it about last week and when they did the TOT. So I happen to be the e-learning officer for my department. So we were trained to train others. So as you're completing the training, you are training your colleagues immediately. And then you're also uploading your lectures and making sure the students register. So in the last 1 week, I'm not sure I've taken more than 3 hours sleep in a day. So it has really, really been tough and challenging for me as a woman. I had to, honestly, in about 5 times, my husband had to give me breakfast and dinner. And this morning I told him I'm going to give him time. So it has been very challenging. And I'm sure it's the same thing with any other person in the University of Lagos. So what we did is to try as much as we can to choke up the registration, uploading of the courses, and then teaching online starts on Monday through Zoom. So I am to fix lectures for other lecturers is also tasking for me, really, really tough for me to manage myself and manage others. I've been able to upload some courses online, but I think I'm learning from what Julie has said and the other presenter has said about how they've been able to cope, because one of the things we are worried about is how we're going to conduct practicals for courses that require students to do practical in their class, because I can't imagine myself teaching molecular online through Zoom. It's a real-time practical bench learning. So, but I think by the time we share experiences, I should be able to overcome this challenge. Thank you so much for this topic, because I'm at the heat of trying to solve that for my department. So lecture starts on Monday. I started physics Zoom meeting for my colleagues. I fixed one for myself, and subsequently I should be able to share my experience with you people, with GWIS and our chapter on how I've been able to teach online and cope with the challenges. Like we have always maintained in having meetings across Nigeria by the time of using data. So far, we are using our personal data to be able to log in to Zoom. The university has agreed to increase their megabytes and the bands to be able to accommodate and then provide internet for us lecturers. However, my worry is about students. We have about 50,000 capacity of students in the University of Lagos, both those on the full-time and on part-time. So I don't know how much and how these students are going to have funding to be able to buy the data to be able to take their lectures online. So as we go along, whatever challenge we encounter, I'm going to update and also seek for advice and be able to get help from my colleagues who have actually experienced that. Thank you very much, and that's all I have for now.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was going to say, we'll switch to the next question, which is, I think Julie should take this one. What advice do you wish you had been given before the pandemic that you would now give yourself with all this experience?
Sorry.
To laugh more? I think it would be to laugh more.
Laugh, so you don't cry. Seriously, that has been, and that started with me last spring. And that's, you've got to give yourself a break. And Francisca, I'm going to email you later to make a suggestion to you where you can ask some questions. That has been this wonderful group I'm in touch with. But you can't be prepared the way you want to be, and that happened last spring, midway through, and it's like all of a sudden you've got to learn how to use new technology. You can't do face-to-face labs anymore. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now, and how am I going to rewrite the labs, and how am I going to communicate with my students? And they knew me at that time face to face, so that helped. And what happened was, and I think this is kind of related to what Francisca said, there has to be this collective effort. No one person in charge of everything. There has to be a collective effort where people communicate with each other. We had 2 learning designers at our campus, which are different from learning technologists. They helped our campus, they helped other campuses of the 14 campuses of Penn State University. And it just had to just go with the flow. My students were wonderful, even now. And I'm not sharing my screen and I'm talking and they'll say, Dr. Ealy, you need to share your screen. My student, you need to develop a relationship with your students where they know you're a human being, that you don't have to do or need to do things right all the time, and you're willing to ask for help. Like even now, stupid sharing of the screen, you know, I will forget to unshare one and I need to share the next one. And they'll say, Dr. Ealy, we can't see your screen. So I'm trying to laugh about this. So, because that's what you have to do. You have to just kind of say, you know, I'm going to do the best I can today. That's all I can do. My students had been in some other classes and I learned some really cool things from talking to them. I attended workshops in the summer. I got help last fall, learned about using a Wacom tablet, how to use an iPad, because I didn't have one. So there's too many things going on at one time. And you just have to kind of go with the flow, do the best you can, understand you're not going to teach the same content that you could teach before. So if you're really hung up on, I must do this, 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 and this, it's not going to happen. It's just not realistic. You know, I'm in the United States, but even this semester, all of a sudden the whole room goes black. I've got my roomies and my Zoomies. I'm disappeared from my Zoomies at home. They don't know where I've gone. So my roomies emailed them through chat and said, don't worry, Dr. Ealy is still here. So, and you know, you lose time there. You know, the last week, the first class inauguration day, during the time of inauguration, I lost it 3 times. So my class ended up being about 25 minutes instead of 50 minutes. So, and this for you, Francisca, where I think you're going to be doing this, it's just, and anybody just have to just go with the flow. You cannot do it right all at once. You can't learn to do everything all at once. And you're not going to have the same amount of time with your students, whatever that you had before in Zoom, especially if there are any internet issues. And that's my advice. And I'm laughing about it now because, you know, even yesterday there were some technology issues that I will not explain just because of how it came about. But I had a tech person. I'm sorry, that's enough. I don't want to talk about yesterday. I'll share with my board members my life of the last week, which I intentionally did not share yet. So it's been a traumatic week. Let's put it that way. So I'm here and I'm excited that I'm here. So check.
Yourself now that you didn't have before the pandemic, now that you have the experience?
I'm sorry.
I'm asking Nazira the same question.
Yeah, so I think building a little bit on Julie's point about going with the flow, I think it's important to avoid the mindset that in-person teaching will return in a few weeks or months, because 2020 has shown us that this pandemic might take much longer than we initially thought it would. So it's important to really utilize distance learning to your advantage. I think we've been pushed to employ new teaching strategies and tools, and this might be transformative for higher education. You've got numerous publications now coming out about how we can tackle this pandemic through our teaching and tools, digital tools in particular. And there's a lot out there that we can utilize, and it's quite enjoyable too. I think interactive learning via the internet could be extremely useful and effective. So I think it's important to have an open mind moving forward and to look into the possibilities of changing your teaching style, not entirely, but improving it. Because teaching isn't about adopting just a traditional single-minded style. It's about teaching students in a different way, tackling different students that have different teaching styles and respond differently. So I think it's quite important to take this challenge, you know, and try and make the most of it. And I think also to rely or to create a bit of more e-learning materials that you can publish on sort of a Blackboard platform, so that you can reuse the material rather than having to create new material constantly. And this would be a little bit of a I think it's a bit time efficient as well, instead of having to constantly change your material to suit the new modules or new assessments. So I think that's the advice I would give someone now. Yeah.
Definitely. And you brought up a good keyword there that I heard was challenge. And that brings in a good point. We actually have a question from Ana Torres, who is a member from Mexico. And she was asking about mental health of the students. Some of them themselves getting sick with COVID, or some of them losing relatives either to COVID or in general, people who have been passing away from natural causes, but during this pandemic where you can't gather and have funerals and do the proper mourning. Do any of the three panelists have anything to say about dealing with the mental health of students and the challenges, how you're helping them deal with the challenges they're facing?
Yeah, I'd like to
I see Julie's hands up.
Yeah, I had 3 students with COVID in the fall, but because of the safety precautions on our campus, I was not concerned. They're also doing random testing. So I knew I did not have COVID, but I went through random testing really at the end of the semester and I didn't have COVID, but the safety precautions have worked very well. But the mental health of the students has been such an issue at my campus. We have a sociologist, I don't know what to call her. She's a goddess. She's a counselor. She has been overwhelmed with the mental issues of students who have abusive homes. The chance to come to class face-to-face has not been there, though we have opened up places on our campus where they can come and work. Students not being able to work, and so not bringing any money in for their for their family or for gasoline. She's been just overwhelmed, and only 103 students were on my campus in the fall, and I taught 80 of them. So, and the student comments really indicated that was important to them. But the difficulties of surviving and not having that personal contact for us, as well as our students, has been has been really difficult. So the mental issues and the stress issues have just gone up for students. Students not being able to afford food, family members. I just had a student whose grandmother died, and she asked me if she could be absent from class last Friday so she could go and see her before she died. She died that night, so she didn't get to see her, and there's not even going to be a funeral for about 4 weeks because they can't process that. The funeral homes are too busy. So these issues are just everywhere, and we have our own issues. We don't necessarily, maybe have the personal contact we want. We can't see our friends, and you can't hug your friends, and so relying on each other for help. So I am readily available for my students, and anyway, it's been difficult.
I was going to say, yeah, we're all processing as adults what's happening and adjusting, and then you have to be there and be a support system for them. I'd be interested in, Francisca, what do you have to say for mental health from the Nigerian perspective, the support system that's going on there, how it's tackled? Because in some cases, like in America, even sometimes it's still taboo.
Yeah, thank you so much, Susan. We normally have units for counseling for students.
Oh.
But however, since this period, a lot of students are actually distressed. My daughter is a student in Nigerian University, and I've watched her 2-3 times feeling very sad in the night. And I'll ask her what is the problem, and she talked about the internet, the work, the assignment. And I'm like, this is not you. So I tried to also use her as an example to find out what she's going through and what every other child is also going through. So it's actually affecting them. Sometimes she will be like, Mommy, I don't want to ask you for money for data anymore. You just gave me money for data a few days ago, and then I'm asking you again. So if I believe a lot of other students have the same problem. So we were going to, and initially when the school reopened, a lot of them were actually distressed trying to get to log in and to know what to do. But one thing I observed in the last 2 days is that I tried to join in a WhatsApp group with them. So they had to put my name in their WhatsApp group. And then I asked them to ask me anything they want to ask, anything they feel like asking or saying, and let's talk about it while we are waiting for lectures on Monday. So I saw a whole lot of them, asking questions, feeling free, saying thank you for reaching out to us. It became fun. In the last 24 hours, that's what I've just been doing, chatting them up. Tell me what's the problem. What do you think? How do you go about it? This is a serious thing, but it's going to be simple. It has happened somewhere. Some people are actually doing very well in US, in UK. How do you think we're going to do? Monday, we hit it up. We know how it's going to be like, and they're actually responding. So, but what I'm going to do, whatever experience I have over this weekend from their complaints, I can also extend it to my department to tell them to get someone fixed for their mental health. But on a serious note, they are actually disturbed. It's actually affecting them. The COVID has not really been so hard as you have in US, but a lot of them are aware that something is happening. The university said they don't want any student around on campus, so because they cannot guarantee their safety for now, so they're all at home. So while they're at home, we also need to, make them feel that the university also care for them and how they feel. So for my department, we are opening up channel. We're asking level advisors to even compile their complaints, and I have a lot of level advisors who are giving their complaints in a tabular form. So students, matriculation number this, I cannot log in, I cannot see my courses, this is so and so and so and so, like that. So that's how we are doing it for now. Thank you, Julia.
And that was wonderful. Thank you. I learned some really neat things from what you just said to add to what additional things I can do for my students. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was
You're
really
welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, and so we have another question. My screen share went off for a second there. I had everything all set up. We have a question from Imelda. I thought maybe Nazira would be good to answer this. The question is, I would like to know from Imelda in Nigeria, our liaison, I would like to know how you ensure that you retain your students' attention all through the teaching, considering the various distractions. I'm laughing because that was a problem probably before the pandemic, let alone with Zoom. So
I think this varies for traditional lectures that contain about 30 or more students. It's difficult to retain their full attention. And I think you're not responsible to keep them attentive, as long as you're delivering your lecture in the best way possible, using some, I think, interactive questionnaires or polls. And you can actually get a percentage of how many people answered those questions. So that would give you an idea of who participated and who didn't. And you can sort of pinpoint and call these people out if you wish to do so. But all in all, I don't think you should be responsible for students being attentive all the time or not. I think that's something that the assessments will inevitably show. In terms of problem-based learning tutorials, you've only got about 8 people, and at Linköping it's compulsory to have your cameras open unless you have certain circumstances that don't allow you to open your camera. And that ensures that students are attentive. I think it's hard if you've got your camera open and everyone's looking at you that you don't pay attention. So that's one way to do it. But because of other privacy issues that might come about from using your camera, I don't think it's entirely correct to put pressure on students to have their camera open at all times. So there's numerous strategies that you can employ. One, you can use polls, and Zoom allows you to do that. You could ask questions, find out how much participation you're getting from the students, call their names out if you think they're not participating, or ask them to open their cameras if they can do that for you.
The webcams, we can require webcams before an online assessment. they have to be notified that that's going to happen. So, but during my class, I don't require it. But what I did with the poll questions, the two things I did together. So you go into Zoom, you get your report, you can see who signed into your class, what time they came in and what time they left. But then you have a poll question at a certain time. You can check later to see, you'll know from the poll questions who actually was there physically, so to speak, answering the question. But your participation might say that Susie was there when she really wasn't. So I used, and it took some time, but I used that participation signing in and the poll. And if a student was signed into my class but didn't do the poll question, that meant for me that they really weren't there. They just turned on the Zoom and turned it off. And I used that opportunity to write their advisors and to say, your advisee signed, and I wrote the student and the advisee at the same time. And I said, so-and-so was signed into the class today, but did not do the poll question. So that says that he or she was probably not there. And, this is something that the person should work on. So word kind of got around that I did that. So and plus the poll questions are just extra points. That only amounted to 10% of the 600 points of the semester. But they knew they were getting points, but it wasn't going to make a big difference. They didn't realize that, but that they were participating. So I used it to check on students, and I still lost some students. And it's first semester general chemistry. It's kind of baptism by fire. And I had students 18 years old coming from high school where they had not really been in class for the last 3 months of high school. High schools were not allowed to give tests or assessments. The teachers could give assessments and score them, but no grades could be recorded. So this year in the fall was more challenging than ever because the students had not even been in class for like 3 months. And the chemistry is hard anyway. So I combined the participation where it looked like a student was signed in with the poll questions to follow through on attendance and with the advisor. And I thought I lost a couple of students, and I thought maybe that checking and that was going to really help, but they just weren't ready for general chemistry. So.
Yeah, and following up on that, Anna, again from Mexico, she was saying that the assessments at a distance are challenging. I have designed 80 different tests for each in my class to prevent cheating. Do any of the panelists have advice? That sounds like a lot of work. One thing I'm thinking, somebody had mentioned videos, perhaps, have them take the tests being videoed, like at their laptop, have the camera on them during the 1 hour, and then have that be part of the submission. I don't know if that's too much, too many megabytes, too much computer data, computer memory, but.
I'm assuming that this is the case for assessments that don't take place live.
Yes, right. Yep.
Is there the option to have the assessment live and an examiner being present for 1 hour?
No, not unless you're face to face. So my first test in the fall I did online, but I was doing face to face, and then the next two were face to face. The final exam was not. The academic integrity issue has been rampant, and with the group that I'm with on Facebook, it just all these crazy ways of trying to develop online assessments so students can't cheat. Instructors checking Chegg and finding their very unique questions answered by Chegg, which then obviously results perhaps in the student having an academic integrity issue. Whoever just said about the 80 questions, on my final, I wrote 157 different multiple choice questions, entered them into Canvas, which is my learning management system, and then divided my class into 6 groups. They didn't know which group they were in. And the exam was 1 try only, no backtrack. So, and they knew that, they knew how many questions they were going to have. They knew the general groups they were going to come from, but it was awful in terms of time. That's what I did to help with the academic integrity issue. But I'd heard some students, I heard about some of my students planning these very unique ways to cheat on the final. They were going to share their notes. They were going to send students, their friends, answers to the questions. And that just really ticked me off. So I wrote them. I have never said to students that I'm disappointed in you. But I wrote an email and I said, I am disappointed in you. I heard about the cheating that was going to go on. And then later, about a week later, I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone believed in academic integrity? Yes, the final was set up so it was difficult to cheat, and they had their webcams on. I couldn't see them. I asked them to sit up. But the discussion that has taken place on Facebook with this group, the ways that people have tried to encourage academic integrity online we're spending so much time. I mean, I had 157 questions in the Canvas, multiple choice. And you have to get your answers in. You've got to make sure you chose the correct answer so your students don't write you and say, Dr. Ealy, there was not a correct answer, which has happened. It's just, we so much time to do that. And we're having major discussions right now on my campus about academic integrity.
Francisca, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I'm actually learning from what Julie is sharing and what Nazira is also saying, because we've not been able to conduct examination so far, and we're starting on Monday to do this online learning. So I'm actually learning from what they're saying. And trying to, so it's really a good thing for me. I really appreciate, and I'm going to follow up with Julie to also teach me on how to do that. So until they tell us our assessment is going to be online, examination is going to be online. So I have to face that in future. So I'm learning. Mm-hmm. Then on getting the students' attention, I think I will share my experience from what I've done so far in trying to lecture medical lab scientists, professionals who are involved in COVID testing. I've been training them since May, every month. So I give them online teaching, and then they do a practical section, about 4 people at a time, so that I can have space to be able to teach them how to run PCR. So what I do is I try to, luckily the Zoom meetings show names of students. So what I do to get their attention is to call them one-on-one by their names. So it makes them to be very attentive, because they know I'm going to call your name. So when I call your name, are you okay? Are you listening very well? And you put them on their toes that they show their attention. So, and once in a while, when I put up a pool question and somebody gets it correct, and I'll be like, oh, I'm going to give you a gift. And they will be like, when are you going to give us? We are not physically available. I said, don't worry, whenever you see me, ask me for your gift and I'll give you. So it makes it very lively that you're trying to give them an incentive to get their attention. You're calling them by name. That means you know that they are there. So it has really been wonderful so far. So that's my experience, and I'll learn more. Yeah.
No, that's great. Yeah, see, we learn at every level. I was going to say now, Nazira had mentioned she wanted to discuss the Erasmus program and mobility. I just want to say as a side note, I apologize. My Zoom keeps crashing with the shared screen, so that's why I've been going in and out of shared screen. So I apologize for that. The computer is doing it without my consent. So I'm trying to keep us on track here, but that's just what's going on in the background. So Nazira, did you want to talk a little bit about the program?
I hope the introduction was useful for those who are interested in the Erasmus Plus mobility program. The reason I mentioned it was because I felt it was appropriate to mention a mobility program taking place in such a pandemic. I think mobility has become very, very restricted. And the key thing I wanted to highlight was one of our objectives is to create more e-learning materials and assessments that are quite appropriate for this program. And I don't know if anyone had any questions or thoughts about that.
What are your topics that are taught in the program, Nazira? The biochemistry, chemistry, whatever. What are your topics? Or
mainly medical ethics, artificial intelligence ethics around research, use of human materials, etc. That's really the key topics. There's numerous topics within it, but those are the key focus. And also promoting research laboratory research projects, introducing the students to pharmaceutical development, diagnostics, etc. And that's probably the most difficult one to implement during this pandemic, because it does involve students visiting Linköping University to engage in the projects at different labs. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to execute that part of the project in 2021, but we have until 2023 to do that.
Yeah, it's very tricky because lots of these fellowships are 1 to 2 years, and we're losing now it's over a year. It's definitely going to be 2 years. So that can be very difficult, because I was a Marie Curie Fellow a few years ago, but I'm involved with the International Training Network, the PhD students, and they're having terrible times. So they're all have mobility, where they're from one country and doing their PhD in another. They're trying to finish or get back. And it's very, very stressful because, sciences, the PhD students, there's a lot of talk of mental health. So this, again, that falls into that category. But there's been a lot of difficulties. Moving on, there's another question. Oh, I'm sorry, Nazira, yeah?
We have a lot of women here from Nigeria and around the world. And I think it would be something really useful to make the most of, or even apply for. This would allow your students to go from someplace in Africa or Asia to a European country to really learn about the different cultures and engage in the different learning styles that are present. So I think it's definitely something useful. And I'm not sure when the deadline is for this round of funding, but I definitely encourage everyone here to look into that.
I sent the link for the Erasmus program in the chat here, and I'm going to save the chat and send the minutes out to everybody, so even those that don't attend. But I Googled it very quickly, and I just added it to the chat for everyone, so they can look at the chat and link to it if they want to, or save the chat for later. Just looking at we should wind down, because then after we finish this discussion, Robin, our treasurer, will talk about a virtual science fair that everyone is open to. But we still have more questions from our attendees, which is the priority. So right now we have a question from Angela, who I know is in Nigeria. And she was saying that, there's no doubt that COVID-19 will affect the performance of students this time. But may I ask, how can someone cope with a slow learner? Are there any extraordinary things one can add to it? Or do you have any advice for students, I believe what she's asking, that already have difficulties and now there are these extra challenges?
I already said I lost some students in the fall just for that reason, because with my campus being a commuting campus and students coming from all over, I don't have just 18-year-old students, but mostly 18. And you just can't do it for all students all the time. And this literally is, I'm in my 50th year of teaching. So middle school, high school, graduate chemistry education, chemistry, whatever. So, and you just have to accept the fact that you're not going to reach all the students all the time. There's going to be ones who don't learn at the same pace. If you can create an environment where they're comfortable asking you for help, that's really great. But students who come in who are not really ready for college, in my case, they don't always know they're not ready. And so they don't know how to ask for help. They've never asked for help. They would never even think about asking for help. And that is a challenge. It is challenging, and it's part of teaching. And it's something you have to accept, that we just can't be all things for all people all the time. It's hard. If you have an ego, forget it. Don't teach if you have an ego, because you're going to be really upset with yourself. That's my advice. It doesn't really help, but it's just something, you're human, they're human, and you do the best you can. That's all you can do.
No, it sounds like it. Everyone's just trying to go with the flow as much as possible. I think now there's no more questions coming in from the attendees. So I'm just looking over. Do any of the panelists have any final messages they'd want to say or advice to give for anyone out there? I guess, Nazira, we can start with you. In the meantime, if anybody has any questions, you can type them into the chat and we can include them in the conversation.
I want to ask Nazira a question when she answers this question.
I'm sorry, I had moved away for a little while, so could you please repeat the question?
It's just any final comments. We're wrapping up before we close the meeting. So any advice or questions or comments that you have for anyone or in the meeting?
I think this discussion was very useful, and I know that some people have mentioned stuff about mentoring and tips and techniques, and I look forward to that meeting in particular because I think it builds on everything we've discussed today, particularly relating to now mentorship at a distance. I hope that's something we cover. But no, I'm very optimistic about what what the future holds, and I hope that I'm one of the teachers that makes the most of the digital tools that are available to us. And I think hopefully that also institutions take on board some of these new digital tools, especially because some do require licenses. But no, thanks to everyone for listening. And Julie, please.
Nazir, what's the level of your students that are in this Erasmus program? I mean, are they PhD, MD, some combination thereof?
Specifically for this program, we are targeting third-year medical students.
Okay.
Yeah, I think part of the international, the ICM program, I do not think it permits PhD students or master students. I think it's targeted specifically at undergrads.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was wondering. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
I think I'm also going to ask Nazira the same question, just like she has observed for Nigerians. Maybe we will invite her in one of our discussions to be able to give us a rundown on how anybody can apply and what is involved, so that we can interact with her on that Erasmus application. I think I've seen that before, but I think it would be good to know more on how to apply and get people to mentor others on how to apply. My question also, I'm a panelist, but I still have a right to ask question. I noticed that there are some platforms where in-depth teaching that has to do with skill acquisition on campus for students. Kotri mentioned about the big blue button for teaching, and I'm aware of that. But is it possible for maybe Julie to maybe give me an idea or on areas where we can say this is the software you can use to be able to teach your practical class, whether your university have that capacity or they have that resource, so that you can also share the link for me to also learn on how to teach other than the Zoom, especially when it has to do with skill acquisitions and practicals.
Yeah,
I don't know what I'm clear with that.
Yeah, I can't do it directly with, all I can do is, and I know I had something else I needed to do for last weekend for our group, but that I will explain in his personal email my past week. But all I can do is go into this group that I communicate with on Facebook, and it has been the most wonderful group of people. Somebody comes on and says, I don't have a lab for this, and this is what I want my students to learn. And somebody writes back and says, email me, I will send you my lab. Let me know if it works okay. So it's that group where there have been tons of ideas that have been shared. Somebody said, I want to do a molecular modeling lab. And I said, email me and I will send you one that I've written for a program that's online, where I had written like 5 different tutorials over a period of 5 different years. So I sent something, then somebody else came on and I was talking, I think, about discussion groups. And I said, I would like to know more about that. So she writes several of us and gives us more detail. So that sharing place has been a good place, and it's not restricted to chemistry. It's not restricted to high school or college. There have been biochemistry, organic, inorganic, analytical, quantitative, general chemistry questions that have come through this group. And I can send, well, I can just say it. It's a Facebook group and it's called Strategies for Teaching Chemistry. And
Okay.
you don't have to be special to go there. You just can go to the site and you can lurk and read people's answers. You can comment on people's things. You can ask questions. But it has been, I've been on this group probably for about the last year. It is the most, it's amazing. Nobody has an ego. It's just, you know, you can go on in there and cry if you want to. This is where I learned about how rampant the academic integrity issue was. It's just been awful. And everybody on the group's been trying to help everybody. But strategies for teaching chemistry, and you do not have to be teaching chemistry. You can go and you can go in and just be there and read responses or say, so like Francisca, if you wanted a tutorial on PCR and you want to do it from scratch, you could say, does anybody have a tutorial that they've written for PCR that works? You know, that's the type of group this has been. And I've asked for help and I've sent help to people. I'm thankful for the smallest things in my life. And this group has been wonderful. And I've learned things from just reading, but the best way to connect is to go into that group on Facebook and just start reading, because every day there's 4 or 5 comments like something just happened to somebody this week and she just needed to let it out. So, and people say, I just went through that too. I feel for you. I understand. So for just mental health type issues and asking questions and you know, people recommend websites or recommend places where you can get kits, or they talk about how they did kits at their own location for home labs. I could have done kits. We had papers and so forth we had to sign. I did face-to-face, so I didn't use the kits. So that's for everybody. Strategies for teaching chemistry. Anybody on here, you can just go to Facebook and just find it, and then just start reading and listening. And you can go back and do a search for them and ask questions. It's a wonderful support group. When you feel like you're going crazy and you wonder, is this normal? This happened in my class today. I forgot what the funny thing, well, it wasn't funny. Something happened this week and the person just needed support. So back to that mental health issue that Susan mentioned. So right, if you're interested, just write that one down, because that can be helpful for everybody on here.
And I could include that in the minutes that I send to everybody. We'll get the exact website or get the exact link, and I'll include it in the minutes that gets sent to everybody for this meeting. I was going to say, just for wrapping up, of course, we want to thank the 3 panelists. We'll still go through, you know, the closing remarks, but you know, for the international chapter. But Robin, our treasurer, she had a message about a virtual science fair. Let me see if I can get back to my screen sharing, if it doesn't crash on me again. Robin, are you there?
I'm here, and I'd be happy to start talking while you share the screen. Yeah. Hey, the United States has an elaborate set of high school science fairs. Now, we've talked about post-high school education today mostly, but these kids are moving into universities and professional schools. So our responsibility is to prepare them for the future. And GWIS provides judges for some of these science fairs. The National Kettle Chapter, for which I had been a member for many, many, many years, since the early 90s, judges annually to encourage young women to pursue their interest in science and research and to follow careers like what we're doing. So for example, I'm the head judge for the Northern Virginia Regional Science and Engineering Fair, and the kids who win go on to statewide and national-wide and worldwide contests to pursue their science interests. Usually these fairs are in person. The kids put together their projects, which they've done during school year, and they set up poster presentations. We walk through all of these posters, hundreds of posters, and talk with the kids and encourage them, telling them about what it's like to be a scientist and give them criticisms and suggestions to do their science better and ask them questions. But COVID has changed things. Now this year's fair in 2021 is a virtual fair. What are they doing? Well, the children are now doing, they've got PowerPoints and single paragraphs for their presentations. So they download their PowerPoints and one-pages of some summaries, which the judges can read and see. And the displays will be available for the judges from International GWIS Day on March 8th through 21. So that's a long time instead of a Saturday morning when we normally walk through the posters. So we have a leisure viewing of all of these projects that children have done. So the judges can access these displays at their own leisure. I'd love to set up an GWIS International set of awards. If I can recruit some judges, we can award the top award and 2 honorable mentions for each of the disciplines. I've got a list of the disciplines, and I think that Susan can send this list or not, but they range from behavioral and social sciences through biochem and chemistry and botany, computer sciences, earth and space sciences, engineering, environmental science, math, medicine and health, microbiology, physics, and zoology. So this, we could award certificates for these winners, the top and the 2 runners-up, and then provide a cash award for the top project of the fair that we have judged. That's what the National Chapter does, but I'd love for us to do that. And because many of the students in Northern Virginia come from international origins, they work with, go to school, their parents are working in Washington, D.C. at the embassies. So it's a highly international area, and it'd be wonderful to encourage these young children and let them know that there are international scientists paying attention to their research. So if you're interested in judging, I really want your help. So by February 14th, Valentine's Day, send an email to me at woo, W-O-O, at gwis.org or to international@gwis.org, indicating your subject areas that we would like to judge. And I'll send you the details to get a link to the project so you can see the PowerPoints and the paragraphs and the judging criteria we have. And then I would like to get the reporting forms back at the end of the fair by close of business on March 1st. So at your leisure, I'd be wonderful to help encourage young up and coming scientists and graduate women in science. My granddaughter got some high school seniors who were destined to college, actually went to one of these in-person science fairs, and they saw the posters and loved judging the students and encouraging them, telling them what it's like to be at university. So I would love to have students as well as teachers to help judge. So thank you so much, guys. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, it was a great pitch. I think you'll definitely get some. We still have 23 people in the meeting, so you'll definitely get some. I know I'll definitely be involved with that. So I want to say, obviously, thank you to Robin, and I'll share all the files and the links that she was talking about. I wrote that in the chat, that I can share all of that in the minutes that I'll send following up. But definitely want to thank our 3 panelists, Julie, Nazira, and Francisca, because of course you gave us a lot of advice and a lot of things to consider, but for even the questions that you asked of us or asking yourself, that helps us all learn, because we are just all trying to navigate in our scientific lives. So thanks not only to our panelists for your involvement, but also everyone that attended. At one point we had 26 or 28 at the same time. That was wonderful, and from all different time zones. And the chat you'll see was really quite active. And so I want to thank everyone, all of our members, for their time, their involvement, your engagement, and also your dedication to this global conversation on science education. And absolutely, please continue the conversation on a global scale so we can learn from our differences and see the similarities among us. Seems like there are no final questions. If there is, obviously type it in the chat, but it seems like everyone got everything out of their system. I'm sorry, Robin, I see your hand, yeah?
Yeah, one last thing, guys. If you're interested in setting up science fairs in your own countries, let me know. I can help you. I think this is a great opportunity to learn about it and encourage your young scientists coming up into the careers in the future.
I was going to say, well, Nigeria is our only subchapter at the moment. That would be wonderful to see a Nigerian science fair. And in fact, you know, whatever, a year or two, I already have talked about visiting Nigeria. So I would love to go in person with a clipboard. Well, I guess it would be a tablet. And walk through the 16-year-olds that are sweating and all nervous for their scientific discoveries.
Susan, I want to go with you, okay?
Oh, absolutely. Well, we'll stop you. We'll stop you over in Ireland, fill you up with some Guinness, and then we'll hop over. We'll be flying nice and high on the road, on the plane
Don't
to.
Put my hair in a ponytail, so don't have to worry about anything else. Don't have to worry about my hair going flat, because I know you think, you know.
That's fine.
No problem.
My hair gets poofy.
I'm going to put
my hair gets poofy. Yours gets flat. But I just wanted to wrap up by saying, yeah, everyone, thanks for attending. Those were the final comments. And the next meeting will be on the 27th of February. And as I mentioned, the topic, which kind of evolved from this teaching, also this teaching conversation, was mentorship. Not only being mentored yourself, but also how to mentor at all different career stages. And Arizu mentioned earlier in the beginning that she runs a company that mentors. So she will be a part of the conversation as one of our chapter members. As I said, email at internationalgwis.org. It's in the chat. You can follow us on social media, Twitter and LinkedIn. And then we have, Twitter and Instagram. And then we have our LinkedIn page that we are also that we are putting up information on. And don't forget, we are looking for a secretary and liaison, membership liaison, which would be wonderful to have some help with our chapter. So thanks again to everybody. And meantime, before this crashes, let me just stop the recording.